Hey everybody, this is Anne. Welcome to Painting Big, and here we are today with our $2 or Tier 1 reward for the month of July. So what we've got is painting smooth skin tones on a 28mm face. That's what we're going to do today. Had some questions about this recently. Actually had quite a few of them about painting smooth skin tones in general. So we're going to start at 28mm, and then I'm probably going to do a larger model and do smooth skin tones for my $10 tier reward this month. So let's get to it. As you can see, we're going very, very close in today. You can see, here's my finger. Yes. So since my dot cam has the capability to zoom this close, I thought I would play with it and see if I liked this function. It seems to be in focus pretty well, so let's see what we can do. So here we are. We are going to be working on skin. One thing I do like to do is I do like to block in the eyes and the line of the mouth first. If you're working with Caucasian skin tones, and this specific question was regarding Caucasian skin tones, what I usually use is a medium to dark brown. This is ruddy leather. You could also use muddy brown. You could use blackened brown. If you want to go very dark, like if she's going to be a dark-haired person or brunette, you could go walnut brown. Walnuts is, I wouldn't go as pure black unless you're going to do something very, very cartoony. Because the minute pure black enters the picture is when things do start looking more cartoony. Usually because shadows in nature are never pure black. All right, so grabbing some of that, and I'm going to block in her eyes with the ruddy leather. I just like to fill in the eye sockets. I like to kind of define that before I go on highlighting the skin. I find that putting a little bit of definition around the area that I'm working with helps me to see everything a little more clearly. Also, just as an aside, somebody was asking what to shade. Like if you're building a shadow, if you're making a shadow or trying to make a darker shadow for one of our existing skin tones, what would you use? What would you mix in? Well, obviously anything that's too dark isn't going to work because with a lot of black, most normal Caucasian skin tones are going to go greenish or ashy. You don't want that, obviously. So what I usually recommend is actually ruddy leather, 9109, or 9109, yeah. Or muddy brown, which is 9028, or russet brown, 9199. Usually mixing them, say 4-to-1 normal skin tone to the brown should give you a decent shadow without it going too ashy. But you always want to go with those warmer browns, and if they are darker, you want to make sure that they're not really close to black. I also like to line the mouth. This is one of the mistakes that I usually see a beginning painter make is not lining the mouth, just leaving it kind of like a pink blob on the face. You really need that line between the lips to bring out expression. As you can see, she's got kind of a smirk on her face. So with this line, I can do that. So let's just get that kind of touched in. I want to make sure I stay on camera here. You may notice I'm using a gigantic brush for this, but what really is important is the sharpness of the tip. So when people ask me on stream, well, how small of a brush should I get? It's like, it really has nothing to do with the size of the brush. As far as doing fine detail, it just needs to have a very sharp tip. So just kind of map in, kind of block in the side of the mouth there. I can touch it up in the future if I want to. I can also define the lower lip right now. Which usually I just will put that way the whole mouth is kind of figured out. She's a little bit truncated on this side. It looks like maybe she just has a really sharp upturn to her mouth here. We won't mess with it because we want to do the skin tones, but for now, that is good enough. It essentially lets me remember where the mouth is. And there we go. So you may notice I base coated already. This is about as light as I would ever get with a base coat on skin tone. I start with my shadow color and work up. I find that enables me to keep a decent dark shadow and still get good contrast in my skin tones. This particular one is my all-time favorite Master Series skin tone, 9044 Tan Skin. The absolute lightest color I would ever base with in using this type of technique would be the highlight to this, Tan Skin Highlight 9045. That's actually the shadow that I would use for fair skin. So if you want a very, very pale Caucasian skin, I would actually go down a level and start with tanned highlight and then go up with the fair skin triad. Because I find that a little extra contrast never hurts. And also the fair skin triad is very close together which makes it easy to blend, but it means that you don't get a lot of drama out of it. So let's see. If we want to do a shadow on the skin tone, one of the places that we probably do want a shadow is under this brow ridge right here under her eye. So let me grab some tan skin, mix it with a little bit of my ruddy leather that I already had out, and I'll show you the color that is. And ruddy leather does have a tiny bit of black in it, but it doesn't have very much. So let's see here. There we go. Let's kind of paint that in. It may not be as dark as I want it. I'll have to see. That does make a shadow, but it's not a very discernible one. I may need more drama. When you're working with 28mm, remember, you have to over accentuate highlights and shadows. If you go too subtle, no one will see it. So when you're working with large models, then you can go very subtle. All you want, you can go subtle, and people will be able to see it because it's on a larger canvas, so to speak. But with small models, you have to over accentuate. And that's why lining became a thing, right? The whole putting a dark line along the mouth and filling in the eyes and just trying to generally overstate the shadows and dark places on a figure. You want to just go a little bit overboard with that. See, all right, now that's a bit overboard. I went a bit dark. I mixed a little bit too much brown into my mixture. So what I can do there is I can just pick up some tan skin and bring it up a little bit. All right, so now we have a decent shadow under both eyes. See how that brings out the brow ridge? It also tells you where to put that eyebrow when you get around to that. Another dark shadow you might want to put in is under the chin. You can actually use this to shape the line of the jaw if there's not a lot here. Like right here, the line of the jaw kind of disappears into her neck guard. Like you're not sure if any neck is showing. So I can essentially paint a shadow here, like I have, to define that jawline. Just where it's bound to be there, right? It's just not sculpted, like there's not a sharp jawline going into her neck. Probably because the gorget is going up so high. And on this side, you can definitely see her jawline there. But on the other side, it really wasn't evident. So you can use your dark skin tone. You can also put a shadow under the ear. That helps bring the ear out. You can put a shadow inside the ear, because there would be a slight one. She's an elf, so she's got bigger ears than most. Most human ears probably would be covered by hair. So now, already, her face is starting to come out a little bit, right? You've got some shadows under the eyes. You've got some shadows going in there. Another shadow, and you can probably tell because the center of her face is all one big blob. Another obvious shadow place is right under the nose, right? Because you do have a shadow right under your nose because your nose sticks out, and if the light is falling from above, it blocks it. You can't get too dark with this one because it will look like a mustache if you do, especially on most 28 figures where they don't have much of an upper lip, so to speak, right? So I'm going to be real gentle. I might thin down my paint a little bit so that it's a little more translucent so I can draw a finer line with it. If you want to get finer details in without having a blob of paint, you want to thin your paint, but you also need to really unload your brush. You don't want any puddles. If you dab your brush on your palette after you unload it and you still see puddles, you've still got too much paint on your brush. You could also put a shadow down the side of the nose. And it doesn't matter if it's much of one. There would be one. So now we're looking more like that, right? And we're getting a little bit more of a feel for the shape of the face. I accidentally blotted in a little bit of her eye there, but that's easy to touch up. So let's do that. Do a quick touch up on that, and then we're going to do highlights. Now, you'll also notice that for a lot of this, I don't need to blend much, right? I'm mostly trying, for the underside of the jaw, I'm just trying to make a sharp demarcation line because I want to define that area. And I may decide that I want to, say, bring it down a little bit. I can use my base coat color to do that. But I still want to keep a shadow, like, see? I want her one jaw to look like the other jaw. Like, she's got a pretty nice square jawline, so I had to kind of introduce that. The other place that I like to line at this point is I like to take my brown and I like to line around the hair a bit. So to put a shadow, what that means is to put a shadow between the hair and the face. And I find that that just essentially outlining the skin area makes it easier for you to see your highlights and shadows on the skin. Possibly because it introduces a bit more contrast. Here we go. So I'm putting that line, see it? And she's got kind of a strand of hair hanging down, so I've put an extra shadow in here. I haven't decided on her hair color yet. All right, so there we go. So we've got a line, got a shadow here to kind of line around the ear. There we go. And that's something, all of this is stuff that I regularly do on 28mm figures before I even start highlighting the face. That shadow under her jaw is doing a pretty good job of being a line between her armor and her face. But now, if you look at her, like, she already has some definition, right? So now we just need to add highlights and bring that definition up even more. Also, it looks like I forgot a lock of hair right there that wasn't apparent on the side of her face, but we're going to ignore it for now. All right, so when you build highlights, you can either follow the triads or you can build a highlight manually. I have built highlights manually here. So what we have, there we go, is we've got our tan skin here. So that's 90-44. When I start building highlights then, I'm going to be mixing my tan skin with a lighter color. So you could just mix tan skin with pure white and it works great. In this case, I decided to use 94-45 Youthful Flesh. I decided I wanted it to go a little more golden in the highlights. So I start out with a mix of 3 drops of tan skin and 1 drop of Youthful Flesh. And so you can see the difference. You want to see a difference between these two colors. You see there's not much of a difference. And the fact that they're close together, you'll notice I did this in the skin tone triads also, those first skin tone triads, the fair skin and tan skin especially. That makes it easier to get a smooth blend. Because if your colors are close together, you don't have to thin them as much to get a good blend. Up here, it's 50-50. So this is more like a 50-50 tanned skin and Youthful Flesh. And then I went up to just straight Youthful Flesh because I figured I don't want to go up too many levels. So when you're doing a 28mm face, you don't have a lot of room, right? And so you don't really need a lot of layers of highlighting to make everything stand out as long as you go up high enough. So for me, a competition level 28mm face is going to probably have five layers, like base coat and 3 highlights usually. And that's going to be good enough. So first we're going to put a highlight on the top of the cheekbone. I have thinned my paint a little bit here. It is, let's see here. It is pretty thin, you can see. See how I kind of see through it there? Yeah, so I am thinning my paint and I have very little paint on my brush because I don't want puddles. So I'm grabbing the paint and I'm picking it up, and it's semi-transparent as you saw on my thumbnail, and that means that it's going to blend right in. You see, you really don't see a big demarcation line there, a big brushstroke line where I did this this highlight. You have a lot of leeway on 28mm if you thin your paint just a little. So now we're going to hit, say, the bottom of her jaw with our first highlight because that tends to stick out and it does catch the light. Reload your paint when you need to. Because you're working with small amounts, you may need to rinse out your brush and reload a couple times. I'm going to hit her chin. When I go to get the bottom line of that jaw, it'll come right up to the chin, so I may as well grab it. There's usually a small highlight right here in the corner of the mouth, the corner of the lip here. That really brings it, see it? Right under that. Now maybe you see why we lined all of this, because that makes our highlights stand out a little more. It actually lets us identify those areas and put in these fine details. It's much easier if you've already outlined them. Then we got her chin. So her chin gets a nice sharp highlight. The forehead is always going to catch the light, so that's always going to get a very strong highlight. You'll start with covering the whole area with your first highlight. Then we're going to go down the bridge of her nose, because that's always going to catch the light. Down to the tip. And now if you've got good brush control, just like you hit that little bit on the corner of her mouth, you can hit the nostrils off to the side. Really just a dab of paint usually is good enough for this. You don't have to be real precise with it. And this is where the fact that we shaded the side of the nose, remember that shadow? This is where this really comes in, because it's that shadow next to this highlight on the nose that makes that whole area stand out now, see? And you can see how even this one layer of highlight up on the upper part of her cheekbone makes that part of the face stand out more compared to this other side of the face. So let's go ahead and make sure that we've got highlights on the top of both cheekbones. If you want and you have the brush control, you can try to hit the eyelid, which does usually stick out a little bit and isn't always in shadow under the brow ridge. See? And it's really just a matter of relaxing your hand and going slow. There you go. So that's all bringing out her expression. See, she's looking really good. Excellent. Now we can get this other jawline. And I'm just really using, because my color is so close to the starting color that I used, I don't have to thin it very much at all, which means that I can draw a pretty bold line with it and still get like a not too unblended effect. I had to remember to hit the other corner of the mouth down here. There we go. That helps to shape the mouth. And a little bit of a highlight there. Excellent. So that's our first highlight, and for many of you, that's probably pretty good, right? So you can see the difference. This is the amount of difference you should be able to see. You should definitely be able to see your shadows. You know, you should see the dark shadow you put under the brow. You should be able to see the nose right away. I've lost my line on this side. Actually, it kind of looks like she's smirking more on one side of her mouth, so this eye is a little squintier than the other. And that's kind of funny. I mean, it totally is doable with a 3D sculpt, right? So, excellent. So hopefully you also see how having this dark lining here really does kind of make the face, the details of the face stand out a little more. Like, compare this side to here, where I didn't line down on this side. See how it kind of just goes off into nebulous space? So if I really want to, I should probably line that really quick. I don't want this video to go on forever. But if I throw some shadow, some harder shadow under there, it really makes a difference. So even just lining your face can give your face a lot of definition. So if your faces look like blobs, try lining. There, see? That makes everything stand out a little bit better. Now this ear is standing out a lot better too. So great. So there you go. Now we can decide how high. Oh, we forgot to highlight our ears. Sorry. Do a quick ear highlight. You want to hit the upper part of the elf ear. You probably, depending on how realistic you want to be, you can also hit the bottom part. But if you look at people's ears, you'll see the bottom part is often pink. And so if you want to be really realistic, you'll actually hold off and use some of the lip color on the ear. And we'll get to that. Let's do a couple quick highlights. Remember, this next one is half and half, tan skin and youthful flesh. Now we're going to make our highlights smaller. We're going to make our brighter highlight more up toward the under the eye. See it? And I'm not going to touch the eyelid because they're good enough, but I am going to hit the tip of this nose and a bit up because the light is always strong there. So you're going to be painting over some highlights. You're going to be painting over the forehead a bit. I'm probably not going to paint right up to the hairline, but I'm going to concentrate with this highlight on the top of the brow, because the light's going to fall there. And if I see that I don't have a blend, then I'm going to worry about that. Maybe I'm going to grab a little bit of my previous one here, my mixture that's 3 drops tan skin and 1 drop youthful. And I'm going to come in and just kind of paint that in there to try to blend in that edge. There, now it's a lot more blended, right? Excellent. So you also want to hit this little spot right on the top of the nose here. Like there's usually a shadow where it indents right here, but you want to hit that area above there. Let me see, I gotta get a little more paint on my brush. If the paint's not coming off the brush, try reloading it, and if it still doesn't want to come off the brush, that means that your paint is too thick. Add water. There we go. So there. And we're gonna get the top of this cheekbone. And these highlights, you can see very clearly now the bands of my highlight, right? We got that little bright one, and then we got this one, and then we got our base coat, right? So you can still see them. They're a lot harder to see in person. This is magnified a lot. So in person, you probably would not be able to see these nearly as easily. I mean, I'm having trouble, even just using my reading glasses, seeing the bands that I can see quite clearly on camera. So the magnification is definitely working. So now we come back in. You got to hit that chin. Hit the corner of the mouth if you can to pick up that smirk. So sometimes you're going over the same areas that you already went over, and often this will be just because I'll be doing it, and I'll be highlighting other parts of the face, and I'll say, no, I do want that highlight brighter there to bring out that detail. So she's looking pretty good, but you can see the bands, right? So, okay, so how do we deal with this? And how are we going to deal with it when we need to say, let's see if it gets chalky, right? What if it gets chalky? How do I deal with that, Anne? Well, first of all, make sure your highlights are nice and bright. So now we'll go up to straight, youthful skin. Tiny highlight underneath the eye. Oop, got a little bit too big there. Grab some water right away and you can scrub that off, or at least scrub it down. Yeah, that might be too much. But you know what? I'm just going to run with it. Let's just run with it. So say you've got that, and then you've got, I'm trying to go fast here. Got that here. Oh, we totally forgot her upper lip, too. That needs a bit of a highlight. I'm probably going to go with 50-50 mix. Sometimes on people's faces, she's smiling, so maybe not with her. But sometimes there'll be an actual connector, like of brightness, between the cheekbone and the top of the lip. Miniatures are rough because 28s really don't have an upper lip. Like it's really narrow, so it's very hard to highlight. So you got to kind of look at the faces and see how well they're done. So we've got all this highlighting. We've still got some dramatic highlights and shadows, as you can see. Especially when it comes to the side of the face, you're definitely going to get a shadow under this cheekbone. I don't even put the shadow in unless I want blush. So first, let's glaze. So we're going to take some tan skin. We're going to thin it way down until it's colored water. And I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. That. This is a glaze. Welcome. Welcome to the glaze. Here it is. Colored water. You are painting with a wash. Except even worse. And we're essentially going to say, okay, well, we can see some demarcations, so we're going to paint the entire thing. We're just going to paint a thin layer of this wash over everything. And we're going to come back quickly, and we're going to essentially slurp off any extra that we see lying around in the line of the mouth, and the eye sockets, and the hair. Very gently. Just try to kind of touch the tips of your brush to the edges of the model, because that's usually where stuff will pool. And look at how that smoothed out some things, right? So now I don't even have to use brush work. I just glazed, and it all like fell much better into shape. I can still see a little bit of a line here. I could probably fix that by just grabbing some of my colors and maybe touching it up just a little. So to smooth it out and even it out. I still want to highlight there. And I also need to get my side nostril because that's gone too dark. There we go. See it? And then this nostril here. So you can see that brush control is going to play a big part in doing good faces. Also, it's very dependent on the sculpt of the face. Some models just have better faces than others. So here we are, and she's looking pretty good at this point. She needs eyebrows. The eyebrows will make this whole area a lot more apparent as far as how I want it to read. But I'm just going to block in the forehead with my highlight here and just go for it. All right, so that's how you get more drama on your faces. You can see there's a lot now of dramatic. If you look at the face front is usually flat and the light is usually falling on the face. So don't be too alarmed if the sides of your faces don't look as dramatic, right? You still should have a jawline highlight. Notice that I didn't take it up as high as the others, though. You should still have a highlight appear on the top of the cheekbone. Going back toward the back here. You should have a highlight on the ear and that highlight at the corner of the mouth, but you don't need to have a lot else. Now, if you do want more, I mixed a color that was 3 drops of tan skin and 1 drop of cobalt scale. Cobalt scale is a bones color, 9458. It's a reddish color. It's a little bit of a muted, darker red. And it's a great color to mix in when you're trying to make like lip and blush colors. You're using the base skin tone that you're working with because that helps everything go together better. And you're grabbing this color, you're thinning it down because you got to figure out how much of it you want. And you never want to paint your blush up onto the cheekbone. It's always down here. The top of the cheekbone is always light. It doesn't have color. And if you notice that you're maybe getting a little bit too blotchy, like you can see blotches, take some of your other skin tones and like paint it over the pink a little bit, or mix the two and see if you can get a happy medium for the blush. There. And that will give you some more interest, visual interest, and shading. You can also use the same color, only full strength, to paint the lower lip that we outlined earlier. And that'll be like a natural lip color. That's if you're going for a very natural lip color. If I wanted a little more red, I'll grab some Kobold Scale and I'll just mix in a little bit into my red pink. Sometimes the lower lip does look more convincing if it's a little more red because it's such a small area. There. So that's a much more natural lip color. So maybe a little bit pink, a little bit dark, but we also may just highlight it, in which case you're going to want some pure white. Boom. There we go. Yeah. And I also look like I got a little bit on the top of the mouth there. So I need to correct that. The camera is really good for this stuff. Even with my magnification glasses, I don't always see it if I do a tiny blurf on the top of the lip. There, that's cleaned up. Excellent. Now we can take our white, mix it with our pink a little bit, but we mostly want it very pale. And you could try to put a dot right in the middle of that lower lip to highlight it. If you lose the line of the mouth, you can always come back. When you do that, make sure that your brush is kind of pressing against the top of the lip. So kind of come at it with your brush kind of pressing toward the top lip, not the lower lip. And try to thin down that line. So she's got a very sharply demarcated lower lip, which, you know, we can play with. We could grab a little bit of paint and try to minimize that. Like you could actually put a little bit of highlight up to reshape her lip a little bit. And could do the same on the other side if I wanted to make it a little slimmer. There's a little bit you can do with paint plastic surgery with that. Like so. And if you really want to, you could mix your pink with your ruddy leather and do a new line on the lower part of the lip to shade it. That's a little bit smaller than it used to be. So there you go. So there we are. And the glaze is key in getting smooth skin tones on faces, on things like faces and arms and stuff. When I do the next model, it'll be either a bust or a 75mm, chances are, or at least a 54. We'll have a bit more room to play there. So blending then becomes more instrumental. But blending isn't too important on little faces like this, as just thin your paint a bit. And when I'm talking about thin your paint, I'm talking about maybe 2-to-1 paint to water. So for all of these, except for maybe your lightest color might need a little bit more water. But for all of these, I'm pretty much 4 drops of paint, 2 drops of water, go for it. So I'm not thinning that much. And if your colors are close together, like they are in most Reaper triads, at least with the fair skin and tan skin triads, you don't need to thin very much. Now, Warrior Flesh, somebody mentioned Warrior Flesh. Warrior Flesh is actually really close to tan skin. It's just a little bit darker. So with that, again, you can take that, you can mix white into it, or you mix a lighter skin tone into it and do just what I have done here. All right. Hopefully that works for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. And for those of you who are $10 backers, be ready for a follow-up on this with a larger model. All right. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for watching. This is Anne signing off.